Welcome to Spiritual Foundations for Life. This is day number 179. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, Paul was addressing a problem that had arisen in the church at Corinth concerning public worship and the use of the gifts, and specifically prophecy and tongues. In earlier chapters, Paul had discussed how Christians should live out their freedom, which was qualified and regulated by love. Sadly, a self-indulgent spirit which had corrupted the principle of freedom in other areas had crept into the church and was distorting the use of gifts for public worship. Such selfishness had produced disunity and chaos in public worship. Paul had said that whatever is done in the church must be for the edification of all. In 1 Corinthians 12, he said that the gifts are given for the common good. In 1 Corinthians 13, he said that the gifts must be expressed in agreement with the principle of love. See, and there was no problem with any of the people using the serving gifts excessively. Here, the primary concern was with the gift of prophecy and the gift of tongues, and specifically their use in public worship. And in response, Paul offered some wise and practical guidelines. First, he said that whatever is communicated in public worship must be intelligible. It must be spoken in the common language, or at least be interpreted into the common language. Prophecy, therefore, is more desired than tongues unless someone has the gift of interpretation, because prophecy is spoken in a language that can be understood by everyone present, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 1 to 3. Second, because the Corinthians were rightly eager to have spiritual gifts, they should try to excel in those that build up the church, according to 1 Corinthians 14, verse 12. These gifts would certainly include serving and ministry and giving and administration and exhortation and teaching, as well as prophecy. It seems to be part of our humanity to desire gifts that appear to be more supernatural or more noticeable to others. Now, supernatural is good, but natural is good too. Actually, the exercise of any gift from God is supernatural, and God always notices its proper use. Third, tongues is a sign for unbelievers, and the gift of prophecy is for believers, because it communicates truth to those who are open to receiving it, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 22. Based upon Paul's statement in 1 Corinthians 14, verse 18 and 19, there is also benefit to the private use of tongues for our own edification. It may not be intelligible to us, but it can still stir up our faith and a sense of God's presence, which enhances our love relationship with Him. However, when a prophetic message is heard, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 25, it says, "The secrets of their hearts are laid bare, which leads to repentance and thus draws people closer to God." Fifth, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33, God is not a God of disorder, but of peace. Paul had previously indicated in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 5, that women can pray and prophesy in public worship as long as they're under authority. In this chapter, Paul seems to be prohibiting them from speaking in church. However, since women were allowed to pray and prophesy in public worship, this instruction was probably just being sensitive to the current and geographical social practices, the cultural practices. In that place in that culture, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 35, where it says it was disgraceful for a woman to speak in the church. But this was not so in the other cultures at other times. Regardless of our understanding on this issue, we should always be respectful, and everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 40. Christian men and women are gifted, and the church is edified when both are living under God's established order and using their gifts to the glory of God. Our key point is that Christian men and women are gifted, and the church is edified when both are living under God's established order and using their gifts to the glory of God. Our key verse, 1 Corinthians 14, verse 15, says, "So what shall I do? I will pray with my spirit, but I will also pray with my understanding. I will sing with my spirit, but I will also sing with my understanding." God bless you. See you tomorrow for another episode of Spiritual Foundations for Life.